All right, so this is going to be another television show review. This one's called The Dick Tracy Show 1961. Giving it 1 out of 5 stars. I hated this television show. It's just a kid's cartoon with very stupid looking, droopy dog running the police department. Dick Tracy sitting at his desk, barking orders to the police dog. The Dick Tracy Show is a U.S. animated television series based on Chester Gould's comic strip Crime Fighter. The series was produced from 1961 to 1962 by UPA. In the show, policeman Dick Tracy employed a series of cartoony subordinate flatfoots to fight crime every week, contacting them on his two-way wristwatch radio. Tracy himself hardly appeared on the show at all. The opening was designed so that the local TV hosts, dressed as policemen, could introduce the cartoon by barking orders into a prop telecom, with Tracy answering, "Okay, Chief, I'll get on it right away." A live action show, Dick Tracy, aired on ABC from 1950 to 1951. Everett Salone voiced Tracy, while Mel Blanc, Paul Frees, Benny Rubin, and others voiced many of the other characters. All right. Running time 5 minutes. Each episode is 5 minutes. I just saw the first one, which was Red Riding Hoods, and it was horrible. I'm guessing the subsequent ones are not much better either. Network first run syndication, release January 1st, 1961 to January 1st, 1962. Now I'm going to watch the first 16 episodes here. They're available for free on YouTube if anybody's curious. If anybody wants to torture themselves watching kids' cartoon. And anyways, a gag used in several shows was that if one of Tracy's detectives found themselves in sudden danger, a bullet speeding towards them, falling off a cliff, etc., he would yell, "Hold everything." The action would obediently screech to a halt and wait while the detective called headquarters for further instructions. Action would resume only after the sign-off catchphrase, 6-2 and even, over and out, was spoken at the end of the call. Villains, taken from Dick Tracy creator Chester Gould's popular comic strip, usually had names that served as descriptions of their physical appearance or some other peculiarity. All were paired with another villain for the cartoon series. They included Flat Top, who worked with BB Eyes, Prune Face and Itchy, Stooge Villers and Mumbles, the Brow and Oodles, and the Mole and Sketch Paris. Each pair of crooks had at least one member who smoked either a cigar or a cigarette on an extender. One villain created specifically for the cartoon was Chester Gunsmoke, who appeared in 2 episodes. Gunsmoke was a Texas-sounding cigar smoker with a literal cloud of smoke obscuring his face and head. All of the villains in the animated series. Stooge had made his first appearance in the comic strip earliest 1933, and Oodles' latest 1955, 6 years before the show was aired. Some of the villains were given voices patterned after famous actors. Flat Top sounded like Peter Lorre. BB eyes like Edward G. Robinson, prune face like Boris Karloff, and the brow like James Cagney. Cartoons seldom involved the title character. The opening scene of every episode showed Tracy in his office speaking in a two-way radio the words, "Okay, Chief, I'll get on it right away. Dick Tracy calling." He would then hand the case over to one of his comic law enforcement assistants who engaged in slapstick battles with the crooks, who compared to their comic strip counterparts were penny ante and not as bright. Tracy showed up at the very end, usually by car or helicopter, to congratulate the assistant on a job well done and to take the crooks into custody. Tracy, as chief of detectives, presented an image of calm professionalism in contrast to the comedic roles that the funny subordinates played. A horse racing expression meaning odds of 6-1 for win or straight money, 2-1 for place money, and even money for 1-1 for show. In the 1941 film The Maltese Falcon, Humphrey Bogart's Sam Spade tells Elisha Cook Jr.'s Wilmer, 6-2 and even, "They're selling you out, Sonny." Trace would play a more prominent role in some episodes that were bookended with a quick lesson on real-world crime fighting. In these, Tracy's would explain to the viewer how their local police use methods such as printer fingerprinting or the use of composite artists to help identify suspects. UPA was also the producer of the Mr. Magoo cartoons, and a crossover was arranged between Tracy and Magoo in a 1965 episode of the TV series The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo. In this episode, Dick Tracy and the Mob, Tracy persuades Magoo, a well-known actor in the context of the Famous Adventures series, to impersonate an international hitman whom he resembles, named Squinty Eyes, and infiltrate a gang of criminals made up of Pruneface, their leader in this case, Itchy Flat Top, Mumbles the Mole, the Brow, and Oodles. Unlike the earlier animated Tracy shorts, this longer episode was played relatively straight, with Tracy getting much more screen time, and Chief Patton was part of the episode. It is notable for pitting Tracy against a coalition of most of his foes, a concept that would be adopted more than 2 decades later in the 1990 film. None of Tracy's assistants, Hemlock Holmes, Joe Jitsu, etc., appeared, and several villains sounded nothing like their Dick Tracy show counterparts. For example, Howard Morris took over the roles of Flat Tops and Oodles, although Everett Sloan reprised his role as Tracy. These 135-minute cartoons were designed and packaged for syndication much in the same way as Associated Artists production package the 231 Popeye cartoon shorts and the pre-1948 Warner Brothers short subjects. Usually intended for morning and afternoon children's television series, a local host would introduce the cartoon as part of the show. The cartoon show was a success, perhaps as a child's version of The Untouchables that was popular at the time. Local host of the show offered Dick Tracy Crime Stopper badges and certificates their viewers could send in for. Mattel Toys manufactured a series of toy gun and a board game with the Dick Tracy logo, and the Crime Stoppers could communicate with each other by toy Dick Tracy wrist radios. So I'm not going to go through all 30 episodes, but the first one sucked. See, you can probably pretty much deduce from the first one that the other 129 suck. And I think there might be 16 to 20 on YouTube that I can watch. So I'm going to sort of pace myself, see if I can get through that as quickly as possible. The Dick Tracy Show was pulled from syndication in the mid 1970s and mid 1980s and was not seen for years afterward because of what some perceived as racist undertones and use of ethnic stereotypes and accents. Some Asian and Hispanic viewers charged that Jiu-Jitsu and Go-Go Gomez were offensive stereotypes. Two stations in Los Angeles removed the airings and edited episodes where they sent out, while one station, KCAL Channel 9, which at the time was owned by Disney, continued to broadcast the Dick Tracy Show until July 4th, 1990. Henry J. Saperstein, then chairman of the UPA, stated, "It's just a cartoon, for goodness sake." Saperstein also pointed out that Hemlock Holmes and Heap O'Calorie, who are British and Irish respectively, are also ethnic stereotypes. The ethnic stereotypes are also the primary reason the Diginet Me Too tunes will not air this series. Select episodes were first released on VHS in 1986 by High Tops Video under the name Dick Tracy and the Oyster Keeper. In 1990, the complete series was released by Paramount Home Video in 13 volumes, each containing 10 episodes and Crime Stopper tips by Tracy, voiced by Everett Sloan. All episodes were released by Classic Media on a 4-disc DVD collector's edition set in 2006 to celebrate the 85th anniversary of the premiere of the Dick Tracy comics. In 2007, Classic Media released two 16-episode volumes, with the first containing episodes 1 through 16 and the second containing episodes 17 through 32. I think the Classic Media first 16 volumes is on YouTube because I'm watching it right now. It's an hour 22 minutes. All right. Go-Go Gomez made his first appearance in the Mr. Magoo Show the year before the premiere of the Dick Tracy Show. He appears in the episodes Requiem for a Bull and Fuel in the Sun. He is called by his full name and is voiced by Mel Blanc in these appearances, but is voiced by Paul Frees in the Dick Tracy Show. The UPA version of Dick Tracy was scheduled to appear as a cameo in the deleted scene Acme's Funeral from the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Curiously, Dick Tracy already appeared as a cameo in the novel Who Censured Robert Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe. Jiu-Jitsu makes a cameo in the Drawn Together episode Foxy versus the Board of Education and is depicted as one of the Asian students who disguised to take the SAT test in place of the other students who are using them to fake their scores. All right. Here we go. Nobody in the chat room. I'm going to make this quick. Then I'm going to take my little puppy poo. And hopefully wake up early. Here we go. Dick Tracy Show TV series, 1961 to 1962, 23 minutes. Why 23 minutes? Is that like 5 episodes? I don't know. All right. Gets a pretty decent 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb. Only 275 ratings. So pretty obscure cartoon series production by UPA, in which Dick Tracy voiced by the distinguished film and stage actor Everett Sloane, played more or less of an incidental role. Most of the crime fighting was left to his assistants. All originals created for the series. Hemlock Holmes, an English bulldog who talked like Cary Grant. The calorically challenged beat cop, Heap O'Calorie. Now I'm waiting for the IMDb to load, and it's taking forever. All right, more like this. Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy and Dick Tracy and Dick Tracy meets Gruesome. There are 3 known versions of the opening titles other than the music and visuals seen on most TV airings. Oh, here we go. Getting back to the plot. All right, there's the calorically challenged beat cop, Heap O'Calorie, who talk like Andy Devine. And the offensively today stereotyped Latino and Asian characters, Gogo Gomez and Joe Jitsu, respectively. Most of the familiar Tracy villains from the comic strip, Flat Top, Mumbles, Prunes, etc., were featured here as well. In addition to Sloane, such talented voice persons and character actors as Benny Rubin, Paul Frees, and Mel Blanc handled much of the voice work for this series. That's the summary from Bob Sorrentino on IMDb. All right. There are 3 known versions of the opening titles other than the music and the visuals seen on most TV airings and home media releases. There is also a version on some episodes that use the same visuals, but with a faster and more chaotic theme heard over the end credits. There's also a completely alternate visual opening, which begins with the squad car coming down the alley as the voiceover announces the title, cutting out the aerial view of the city traffic jam, parting for the squad car completely after the title flashes up. This then cuts to a shot of Tracy in the moving car's passenger window, who turns and points his gun at the viewer and fires 3 individual shots, with each shot revealing a different set of 3 regular villains in the zoomed-in hole of the gun barrel. Tracy then puts his gun away, and the sequence ends as the car drives away. The usual shots of the startled pedestrians are not used in this version. This version is rarely seen on TV or on any of the episodes released on home video, as it appeared to be used only on select episodes, and most home media releases omit multiple opening and closing sequences between episodes. Here's a quote from Headquarters: 6-2 and even, over and out. Alternate versions. Some airings delete all of the segments featuring Joe Jitsu and Go Gomez due to protests over the ethnic stereotypes portrayed in them, featured in TV's Illest Minority Moments, presented by Ego Trip 2004. All right. Here's a review from the Owen Throp, September 4th, 2006. Owen Throp the Owen Throp gives gives this one a higher rating of 5 out of 10. I'm only giving it a 2 out of 10. I hated this television show. Cartoon nonsense. The title of the review on IMDb is a cartoon series for the undemanding kid of 6 or 7. The television generation grew up with one innovation that its predecessor did not have: cartoons from Winsor McCay through Walt Disney, though Walter Lantz, Chuck Jones, Ted Avery, and the rest were meant for adults. They were designed to appeal with in-jokes and commentaries about current events. When Bugs Bunny confronts a gremlin in the U.S. bomber the gremlin is trying to destroy, Bugs looks at the camera, figuratively speaking, and says, while the gremlin is sneaking in the back, "You don't suppose that is a gremlin?" The gremlin grabs one of Bugs' ears and yells, "Well, it ain't Wendell Willkie." The fact that an audience of kids born from 1945 onward would never hear of the Republican presidential candidate until he or she took on an in-depth 20th century U.S. history course. The baby boomers did enjoy the knockabout and silliness of Woody Woodpecker or Bugs Bunny or Donald Duck and Goofy, but the shows that were on television in the daytime to comfort the kiddies did have jokes that were 20 years old or so. So new cartoons were needed, and for the first time, the cartoons were designed for kids. Unfortunately, this meant that the producers, directors, and writers of cartoons, thinking they were doing something good, dumbed down the cartoons. Not all of them. There was the marvelous Rocky and Bullwinkle. Some of the Heckle and Jekyll were good, but Harvey's dismal. Casper, Wendy, Herman, and Catnip, Little Loda cartoons repeated the same stupid situations again and again, and they were not alone. I hate to add that Hanna-Barbera did trends, imitating classic comedians like Joe E. Brown as Peter Posthumus or Bert Lauer as Snagglepuss, that were tiresome after a while. But then there were occasional glimmers of originality by HB. They did create the first cartoon series and the successful one that played at night, the Flintstones, but even that was a cartoon version of the Honeymooners. To be fair, Chuck Jones did a series of cartoons about mouse characters like Ralph, Alice, Norton, and Trixie. It was set in Brooklyn and called the Honey Mousers, but it was only 3 cartoons for theatrical release. This series appeared in 1961, and it was good for the undemanding infant like myself. In retrospect, after reading the old Chester Gould comic strips, it was dreadful. As was pointed out in another reviews, the characters of the villains were all lone wolves against the police, and with good reason. They had different criminal activities. The mole, before he reformed, kept an underground hiding place for fugitive criminals. Pruneface and separately the Brow were Nazi agents. The Brow would be killed when he was impaled on a flagpole with the U.S. flag on it, quite symbolic. Flat Top, named for the nicknames of the aircraft carriers of World War II, was the first killer for hire in a detective comic strip. BB Eyes was running a stolen rubber business. It was wartime, and rubber was a commodity the government needed. In trying to flee from Tracy, BB Eyes hides on a barge. When the garbage is dumped, a tire falls around his arms, pinning them to the side so that he drowns. The mostly odd change, actually by Gould, was Stooge Villiers. Originally, he was a highly skilled pickpocket hired to frame Tracy for theft. Then he became a rival of Tess Trueheart, but he gradually is exposed. But instead of dropping his rivalry, He kept returning as a bigger and bigger criminal. It never really made sense. Gold was trying to make his comic a weekly morality story where crime does not pay. The results were quite good, even if his names resembled the stick figures of John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. For example, a man who gets his way by giving money to politicians is Mr. Bribery. The show dumbed down the comic considerably. Besides pairing off the criminals, the detectives were never Tracy, but four caricatures that were silly. Hemlock Sholmes, a talking British dog. He sounds badly like Cary Grant. Joe Jiu-Jitsu, a Japanese detective who was a whiz at judo. Go Gomez, who was a super fast Mexican, complete with sombrero. He was a steal from Chuck Jones' Speedy Gonzalez, although Speedy was a mouse. Finally, here there was Heap O'Calorie, a fat cop who used his prodigious belly as a weapon. His voice sounded like Andy Devine. With Sholmes, there was a Keystone Cops group who aided him. Tracy would, as was mentioned on this thread elsewhere, get an assignment on his intercom from an unnamed chief and pass it on to one of the four detectives via his two-way radio. They always beat the bad guys, but that was expected for the cartoons for the kiddies. I saw it when Chuck McCann was doing a Sunday morning show for kids in the New York metropolitan area. McCann's show, Let's Have Fun, had these cartoons, the Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, and other programs mixed in. And he would come out for the Dick Tracy segment as Tracy to a theme song. Dick Tracy, he's got a bulldog jaw. Dick Tracy, for he's the arm of the law. Dick Tracy, you must do what he say. Crime doesn't ever pay. That was not the theme of the Dick Tracy show, but it was for McCann, who would shake his finger at the viewers when they were told that crime never paid. These days it seems rather feeble, but McCann was enjoying his performance, and it did lead into the cartoons. Fortunately, they ended soon enough to make way for Bud and Lou, or Moe, Larry, and Curly. Hardly great cartooning, hence its lack of revival on television. I think it would. They won't play it on television because it has too many Mexican and Asian stereotypes, while people ignore the Irish and English stereotypes. So I'm 18 minutes in and I'm done with my Dick Tracy review, the Dick Tracy show review. I guess I'll go down my list if I could pull it up. Here we go. Assassins, number 1, 1995. Then The Mummy, 1932, and Midnight Phantom, 1935. Those are my next three laters.